All right, and we are live. Welcome, everybody, whether you're on Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, I feel like we're everywhere, but welcome to the Transgender Awareness webinar. I'm Rowan Blackwood. My pronouns are he, him, she, them, and they, them. You can see them listed on Zoom here in case you forget, or the new pronouns are new, any of that. It's right there. But I'm happy to meet you all. I am representing Respect All Love today, which is an organization I started a few years ago. And today this event is held as a collaboration between Respect All Love as well as the LA Mission College LGBTQ plus club. So before I go any further, we can bring Joey up here to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the club.
Hey guys, my name is Joey Skaggs. I am the president and co-creator of the LGBTQ plus club at LA Mission College. And I started this club roughly 5 years ago, and we are going strong for the 5 years. We actually just got word that a new building is going to be built at our college, and in that new building, we are going to have a LGBTQ plus center for the LGBTQ plus club and LGBTQ plus students on campus. So that's great news for our school and for our community on campus. So that's amazing news to hear. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm streaming from Los Angeles. So hope you guys enjoy.
Awesome, thank you. And so one other thing that I wanted to share, we have a couple more things just before we get into the event to acknowledge and also set some agreements. One of those things is a land acknowledgement. So for those who don't know, a land acknowledgement is taking the time to remember that we are on stolen land and take a step in learning the history of the Indigenous people who European colonists forcibly removed. We do these acknowledgements also to realize our place in history and support Indigenous communities today. So we're still learning every day. It's definitely a process, but as one small step, we wanted to acknowledge that we are currently based out of what's now known as Los Angeles, and where I'm coming in streaming from today. But it's on the unceded lands of the Tongva, Kits, and the Chumash. So to find the land that you reside on, if you would like to, we're going to put the link in the chat for native-land.ca, and you can just search the city that you're in, and it will tell you the names of those communities that had those lands first. I don't think it shows the name of the lands itself, but you can do some further research and find that out as well. So yeah, we try to do that at every event just to start off and put that acknowledgement out there for the communities, both in the past and today. One other thing before we go in, we also have some event agreements at Respect All Love, really just to keep everybody safe. And so we won't be going over the full version. We'll put the link in the chat for that if you'd like to take a look. But I would love to hand it over to Molly to read a summary of that.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the talent scout and resource curator here at Respect All Love. Today I'll mostly be in chat, posting links to LGBTQ resources, so if you have questions, concerns, or tech problems, please DM me. That being said, let's get into our event agreement. Always be kind and do not discriminate against marginalized groups, use problematic reasoning, be rude, or engage in bullying. Please use I statements rather than generalizing, making assumptions, or offering unsolicited advice. And if you're sharing a lot in the discussion, please take a break and allow others to contribute. In addition, please follow the Vegas rule. What happens at Respect All Love stays at Respect All Love. All our events are strictly confidential unless otherwise stated or given explicit consent by someone. Speaking of consent, please be mindful of triggering language and actions. If you bring triggering topics into the space, please give a content warning first. In addition, please respect pronouns and names, including pronoun and name changes. If someone has a voice crack, please applaud or post supportive messages in the chat. On a completely different note, please don't ever intentionally use NSFW, say curse words or discriminatory slurs, post or positively reference offensive memes and symbols, spam the chat, yell, interrupt, or use offensive slang like no homo and that's so gay. If discussing politics or religion, please only state your views without disparaging others' views. If you're not using a virtual background, please check to make sure there aren't any flashing lights or other potential seizure triggers in your environment. In addition, please turn off your camera if you need to eat during the event. Also, please mute your mic to prevent background noise unless you're communicating on mic. On another completely different note, please do not make advances outside of platonic friendship unless you're already in relationships with others at this event. Again, please DM me or someone else at RAL or LAMC if you have concerns about the event or behavioral problems. We want to make sure this is a good experience for everyone. If you're down with any of this, please give a thumbs up, virtual or not, or agreement in the chat or on mic. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Molly. Seeing some thumbs up.
Yeah, thank you all for the thumbs up. Love to see that.
And of course, those links are in the chat if you'd like to read a little more, if you have Zoom issues, or you want to use our wonderful virtual backgrounds, such as Molly is showing right now. Alrighty, so I'd love to hear if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, name and pronouns. I think a couple of people have shared where they're zooming in from or joining on another platform, such as Facebook or Instagram at the moment. Feel free to do that. I'd love to get to know where all of you are coming from. If you're in a club, if you're an educator, a parent. I know we have a lot of GSAs and students, but we've also had some other people sign up for this event. So I want to make sure I can cater this to you as much as possible. This event will be under an hour. We will end by 5:30 or 7:30 CST, 8:30 EST, depending on where you are, but within an hour. So the presentation will be a little bit shorter than that, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So you're welcome to put any questions that come up at any point during the event so you don't forget. But then Molly will be putting them aside until the end, and I'll be happy to answer some of them. And Joey also has some advice and knowledge from running a club for 5 years. So we've got plenty of resources here for you, as well as more to share if we don't have all the answers, but we'll do our best. So happy to have you all here. All levels of participation are welcome. And let's dive in, shall we? Are we feeling ready? We're feeling good? All right, let me get this share going. All right. So some of you may have seen this gender unicorn before. Even as a transgender non-binary person myself, like looking at this, I think it's a very inclusive way of showing all the possibilities beyond just the gender binary that has been culturally imposed on us, that we learn as we grow up and really through everything that we do, whether we realize it or not. I'm hearing some bubbling. I think someone unmuted. Oh, there we go. All right, cool. Thank you for that. But yeah, so rather than like going over a bunch of terminology lists on a screen, I think this is a very visual way to kind of break it down. So when we're talking about certain things, this will help like set up the rest of the presentation. So when I'm saying gender identity versus expression, you'll know a little bit more of what I'm talking about. So gender identity, you'll see this rainbow here. So it's in this like thought bubble. It's the internal identity feelings around gender. So it may differ from all these other aspects, whether it's close to or completely different. If you're asking someone's gender identity, you're going to be asking a different question than what's between their legs, which you shouldn't ask someone in the first place. Or at least ask more respectfully if they're open to that, but you don't need to go there. But you'll see like you have the like female/woman/girl, male/man/boy, and other gender or genders. So like for me personally, I identify as non-binary, so neither female nor male. I'm kind of in this other gender realm, kind of fluctuates, but it's complicated. It's that like internal sense. So it's going to look different and it's harder to explain because of that. Gender expression or gender presentation, on the other hand, is all of the external factors. So it can be hair, it can be clothes, it can be any way that people feel playing around with gender. You know, for me, sometimes it's makeup or accessories or clothing. Sometimes it can even be like mannerisms and acting certain ways. Even pronouns can kind of be in that category a little bit. It's like that social aspect of how you're perceived. Next, we have sex assigned at birth. So that's a really good phrase to kind of fall back on that not everybody knows about. They'll say like sex versus gender, but the transgender community has built this phrase saying sex assigned at birth instead. One, because with medical transitioning, if a person wants to do that, it can change. So saying assigned at birth makes a further separation from gender identity if the person might identify differently than what they were assigned. It's kind of another way of putting it, you know, someone's born and they look at them and they're like, oh, well, this fits what we define as a female or what we define as male, or neither, which is what intersex is. I'm not going to focus too much on intersex because although there is some overlap, it's a different conversation. And so I encourage you to do your own research and or go to other events. We'll have an intersex panel next year. So stay tuned, but another subject. So hopefully that explains that a little bit. Again, if any of this is too fast or you want it worded differently, just let me know and we can circle back. Lastly, we have sexual attraction and romantic attraction or emotional attraction. And these are completely different than gender. Although they might be related in that we'll say like, oh, I'm attracted to this gender or these genders. If someone is trans or non-binary, it doesn't mean a particular thing about who they're attracted to. So kind of with that actually leads into a video that I wanted to show from the Trans 101 video series. I think they have 4 videos, maybe a couple more. And so I'll just show you a snippet from this one, but the link will be in the chat if you want to check out more later.
And the most important thing you need to know,
there's no one right way to be trans.
There are a lot of different ways people might identify.
It's not about knowing every single one,
but rather being open to difference when you encounter it.
And also keep in mind that gender and sexuality are largely separate things.
Lesbian, bisexual, asexual, gay, and straight are a few different examples.
But we're all those things in addition to being trans.
They're not the reason we're trans.
I think for me, there's kind of been this expectation that I transitioned because I like guys and wanted to get with them more easily. Actually, I'm a super gay lesbian.
I love that video, not only because of the like bit of humor at the end, but getting to see like all these different trans and non-binary people just being in different expressions, different identities. We don't even know their pronouns or what their exact identity is, but hearing it from them and seeing a lot of different people is part of why I picked that. And I've experienced a bit of the same thing when I came out as trans non-binary. It was like, oh, what does this mean? Does this mean like I was in a relationship at the time, so they'd ask me like about my partner and be like, oh, well, are they like, does it change their label gender wise or sexuality wise? And it's a very individual thing. So you don't really have to worry about that as much. That was a whole nother coming out story, but yeah.
And the most
there we go. Okay. So next thing, another big topic here, names and pronouns, right? First off, Zoom meetings. Yes, hello, we're in a Zoom meeting. And I put my pronouns on my name. I saw a few other people do it. Thank you for doing that. This is a big way, a small way, but a big way to show, not just show your support, but really normalize this. Because it's not just, oh, I'll put my pronouns on there as someone who's, if you're someone that's not trans, putting it on there to show support. It's making it a normal thing, because going back to the gender unicorn thing, you can't tell someone's identity by looking at them. And it's a really hard thing to break that habit. But the more that you do, the more that saying your name and your pronouns together and asking people for their pronouns and using less gendered language and breaking down gender roles, all of that kind of comes with it. So putting your pronouns on Zoom meetings is a really easy way. You don't even have to say it out loud. And it makes people feel more safe because there's that acknowledgement. And also providing your own is sometimes a better way than to ask someone, just in case, not knowing their comfortability. So if you offer it, then it's part of the conversation. They can just jump on if they want to. The next part is class rosters. This is a big one for me. We talked a bit about it on a live stream that Joey and I did a couple days ago leading up to this event. But in case you missed part of it, so as you probably know, a lot of trans and non-binary people will choose a different name than the one they were given. I also have experience with that. But some classes, at least on college campuses that I know of, will have an option to put that chosen name on the roster. So your teachers will see that and automatically call you that, rather than having the old name on there and having to deal with that constantly, even before it's legally changed. So it's not always possible, but sometimes it's worth an ask, and you never know. Or if we have any educators joining us and that's not a possibility already on campus, you can build that within your own class and ask people if they have another name they want to be called. It could be a nickname, or it could be a queer person with a chosen name. Like, lots of possibilities here. I kind of touched on this, so I'll go pretty quickly. Same thing, like verbally introducing yourself. You can offer your pronouns, or you can ask someone. Typically, the better way to go lately is then like just offer them, offer your own pronouns, and then kind of leave it open for the other person. Catch your assumptions. Obviously, kind of went off this, just that like starting to realize that like how often you just look at someone and automatically identify it. It's one of the first things that we think of, that we're taught to think like, oh yeah, that person's a man. And then like, we don't have it consciously, like, oh, that person's a man and that means this, but our brain is doing that. So just starting to catch that. It's a long process. I'm still in it and I'm trans myself. But it will make a huge difference to yourself as well, honestly, at least in my opinion. I've got this other video to show you from this person called Jackson Bird, and he did this great TED Talk, just another snippet of it, but cool, different perspective.
Being trans is awkward, and not just because the gender I was assigned at birth mismatches the one I really am. Being trans is awkward because everyone else gets awkward when they're around me. You know, people who support me and all other trans people wholeheartedly are often so scared to say the wrong thing, so embarrassed to not know what they think they should, that they never ask. And part of what was so nerve-wracking about coming out as transgender was knowing that people wouldn't know what I meant. And when someone comes out as gay, people know what that means. But when you come out as trans, you have to face the misconceptions that will color other people's impressions of you even after you've educated them. And you will have to educate them. When I came out, I wrote a 10-page encyclopedic document with a zip file attachment of music and videos that I sent to every single person I came out to. And I kept in my email signature for months afterwards, because you also don't ever stop coming out. I came out to the accountant helping with my taxes, and the TSA agents who didn't know which one of them should pat me down, the man or the woman. I mean, I just came out to everyone watching.
So again, just a couple little snippets of like, even those little stories he mentioned about like the TSA agent, the accountant, realizing all those little moments of like, we are coming out constantly. And for those who are closeted, all of those instances that they're not coming out, they're having to deal with maybe an old name that doesn't feel like them, pronouns that don't match them. If there's any other like discomfort, whether it's physically, socially, all of those things. Again, it's a lot to get into, and this is a very basic overview, but just some things to think about. All right, so now I want to talk about what being an ally can really look like. Like, what are the steps that each of you can take today and tomorrow and every day? The first thing you won't always know, going back, I'm going to keep repeating this, but you can't tell by looking at someone. One of the kind of comments that come up a lot in the community is when people say, oh, you're trans? Like, I wouldn't know, I wouldn't have known. And although it can be meant as a positive thing, it doesn't really come across that way. And we'll usually know like if you mean it in a positive way, but that wording is like, trans people look like everything. It's part of like showing the Trans 101 video, seeing all those different people. We're everywhere and everything. It's no one particular look or way of dressing or path of transitioning. So keeping that in mind. Better safe than non-inclusive. If you're not sure if there's someone in the room that might be trans or non-binary or otherwise LGBTQ+, and you might need to like have more inclusive language or ask or whatever, better safe than to be leaving someone out or making them feel uncomfortable. So if you don't know, just go with the most inclusive option and you're good. Always fun ones, sport a flag, sticker, funny shirt. So I included this picture. Quick little side note promo. This is an Asian American trans non-binary small business owner, and actually found them on Instagram at first and probably also TikTok, honestly. But they have so many cool t-shirts and sweaters and other merchandise like you see in this photo here that are just really simple and effective, like protect queer kids, protect trans kids. They've got all kinds of different identities represented and cute little designs like this that anyone, whether you're trans or you're an ally or another part of the community, can wear. So that link is in the chat. I highly recommend you check it out. I might even buy something after this. But the point is, it's easy. It's an easy way to show your support and to show that you're a safe person and a safe place for the community to come to by just a little sign like that. Updating your language, pretty basic, just catching those gender terms like ladies and gentlemen or hey guys, those kinds of things, and starting to see what you can replace it with. Maybe it's y'all. That's my personal favorite. Maybe it's everyone instead of ladies and gentlemen. Maybe saying they instead of he or she. All those little things. And lastly, listen. This is really the biggest thing about being an ally. There are some tough conversations here. I appreciate you, all of you. Let me try that sentence again. I appreciate all of you being here today to listen to me for an hour, basically. But that means a lot to me, because that's really the most important thing, is that you're here to listen and to learn. And as long as you're doing that, you're in a great place. So if you're ever stressing about, oh, I messed up, or I don't know what this means, like, you're good. You're making the effort and you're listening. And today you're here. And I really appreciate that. So if you want to show a sticker, float a rainbow somewhere, I would also like to float on a rainbow, but that's another topic. But yeah, thank you for that. I have one more video I'd like to show you on another piece of like what you can do, just some food for thought. It's another Trans 101 video as well, just a heads up.
There can be a bit of an expectation that trans people should be the ones
breaking down gender roles, barriers and binaries.
And be the change makers.
And to be fair, we often are.
However, if a trans person happens to present in a way that's not what you might expect,
Or is actually kind of stereotypical for their gender, that's their right too.
Trans people are often held to super difficult standards.
If we aren't stereotypical enough, we get misgendered.
but if we're too stereotypical, we get accused of reinforcing gender roles. It's important that trans people aren't the only ones expected to be breaking down outdated ideas about gender.
We often have less room to do it than our cisgender peers.
Having great cisgender allies by our side,
working together to create more inclusive ideas about gender,
is awesome and makes a huge difference.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. All right. So with all of that said, if you want to enter in the chat kind of some of your thoughts, your takeaways off of all this, what steps will you take to be a better ally? I threw a lot of ideas out there, but I'm curious, you know, what sticks, what really calls you? Is it just offering, if it's offering your pronouns and getting used to saying that? Is it the visual cue? Is it listening to somebody that you know? Even doing research, following some queer creators and small businesses. There's plenty of options here. I'd love to open up the chat and stop sharing for a couple minutes so we can see. And even in the club space, if you have ideas of like in the club, how to be more inclusive of your trans and non-binary members. As people are typing away, oh, we got one in there. Oh, awesome, we got some more resources in the chat. Thank you for sending that. I'm gonna save that as well.
I've been encouraging all of my members to use their pronouns when they come to Zoom meetings or when they come in person on campus.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great place to start for sure. Let me check over on the Facebook stream. Make sure I'm not missing any people over there. Definitely the assumptions are a hard part. It's still a hard part for me too. So like continuing to just catch myself and yeah, it's so trained, you know, since we're born, since before we're born, we have all these expectations put on us, and then it's in our own heads when we look at other people as well. So totally understandable, and I'm dealing with it too. One other note I realized I didn't explain, I've been saying trans and non-binary. So just in case anyone's not aware of like why I'm separating them, because I identify as both, but not all non-binary people identify as trans. And of course there's binary transgender people as well. So just saying transgender and non-binary is my way of like being inclusive of also the non-binary people that don't identify as trans. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Gina, for putting that out there. And that's a huge step. That makes such a difference. I don't know if anyone's brought that up at your school or any of your students, but coming from a student who partly uses they, them pronouns, and my presentation doesn't necessarily give off my gender currently, I can really appreciate that makes a huge difference. So thank you for doing that for your students.
What does the they pronoun mean, the XE pronoun?
Thanks for asking. Yeah. So that, and if you see the like my pronouns on the Zoom, I have he, ze, and they. So Z is that XE, and it's part of a set. I can put it in the chat. We'll have a neopronouns conversation. So that's the full set printed. You can also write it with a Z, but I just personally like the X better. So they're neopronouns, and neopronouns are new pronouns. If you look at like the word itself, that's what it means. They're pronouns that people have been coming up with as a neutral alternative to he, she, or they. Because some people struggle with saying they as singular, even though it's been around for a long time. Some people just don't feel as identified with they, them pronouns, which is also valid. I started out with just using they, them pronouns when I came out, but I've started to stray from that. So I'm mostly using he, him, and ze, them pronouns. And I just like starting using those pronouns, the neopronouns in addition, because it doesn't have those ingrained things. You know, it doesn't have the gender roles that are assumed with he, him, or she, her. And it's not as like vague in general as they, them started to feel for me. So totally nothing wrong with they, them pronouns. I'm still okay with it if you want to use that. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question. There's a lot of different sets of neopronouns. There's like fey, fair, there's air, there we go. A lot of things. There's actually a great page I can send that's an Instagram page, and this guy, he has a lot of amazing content, but some of it has neopronoun explanations and pronunciations. So if you're interested in learning a bit more, I just want to check the spelling. All right, and I have a couple like stories I can share, but we can open it up for all Q&A, so feel free to put in anything I didn't cover, anything that I like went over briefly that you want to dive into more.
I also dropped some resource links in the chat if anyone is interested in checking out some of what Respect Out Loud does.
Thank you, Molly. All right, I also like to talk about some more on-campus things, since this is partly focused towards the student experience in clubs and otherwise. So and we covered a bit of this on the live stream, but for those of you that might have missed it, or just to go into more depth, I've had a lot of experience with being out as a trans non-binary person on campus and kind of being that one in the room that's like the go-to. And that's one thing that does kind of come with coming out sometimes, is being the one that people go to like ask the questions, which for me, I mean, I'm doing this webinar, clearly I welcome it, so it's okay. but yeah, so that can be a part of it on campus. If people don't want to deal with all the questions, they might not be out. But for me, it's been a little different. I have been very much out and talked about it in basically all of my classes. In the beginning, I sent emails to teachers before I started the class to be like, hey, I use these pronouns. Please respect that and use that once we're in the class. Just keep that in mind. Same thing once I changed my name and started going by Rowan, then I would email them, hey, I use this name, but you're going to see this other one. And so just keep that in mind and please use Rowan as well as these pronouns. Luckily now the school that I go to does do the class roster chosen name option. So I was able to, once I found the name I was really happy with, reach out and get that updated. And now it's one less conversation I have to have with all of my teachers. It's already on there and there's no questions. Pronouns is a little different because that's not on the online system, but there was this one teacher that I love telling this story because it was just very unique. But he was new to singular they them pronouns, and it just wasn't something he'd experienced before, non-binary identity and singular they. And he was one of my songwriting teachers, my favorite teacher too, even with some of the difficult conversations that we had. But I wrote a song that was a romantic song about someone who uses they them pronouns. And so he listened through the whole thing and then was very confused and tried to clarify that it was about one person, but I was saying they. And once I explained that like they're non-binary and this is how they identify, he gave me a challenge. It got very awkward and quiet, but then he gave me a challenge to write a song that used singular they them pronouns in a way that would make him understand as, in his words, a cisgender white old man. In his words, this is not be trying to be mean. And so I ended up writing this song called They Them Theirs. That was one of the more like very direct songs that I've ever written. And it ended up changing like my creativity and how I felt being on campus, because I was like, well, I've had this difficult conversation with this guy. I didn't know if he was going to understand or not. And it went okay. And now I'm singing about my pronouns in front of this class and him. So if I can survive that, like, I think it's going to be okay. And I just like sharing that like piece of, even when you think someone's not going to be understanding, they just might. And sometimes being bold and very direct, as scary as it is, can be worth it. And of course, not everyone has the privilege to do that and to feel safe enough to do that. But if you do, take advantage of it. This is what I'm trying to say.
Can I share a story as well that I experienced? So a few weeks ago, I started working at Hot Topic in Burbank. And during the interview process, even through the online portal, they, the employer that hired me, he asked me what my pronouns were in the interview. And I just thought that was really cool because I know a lot of job sites don't do that. They're not up to date with those kind of standards. So, and Hot Topic is known to be an LGBTQ plus supportive community. And we do have, we're not like stores that like put up our pride things, but like we don't really mean it. Like there's some businesses that are like, they put up their pride stuff during Pride Month and then they're like, they take it down a month later because they don't really care. Our store does it year round. We have pride stuff all around our store, and I do work with transgender individuals, and at work we use their pronouns, and we have a very diverse community of coworkers, and I just feel honored to work in that kind of environment where I feel safe to be who I am, but also the transgender individuals that I work with also feel comfortable working in that type of environment. So I wanted to share that if you guys do experience that, it does happen. There's employers that are starting to do that now. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And it's great to highlight the places that are inclusive, like you said, not just, oh, it's Pride Month, let's get some more money in here by putting some flags and bringing in the community. I'm really glad you had that experience with them. We're gonna start wrapping up, so make sure to get any questions in so we can take them. But I know this was a very general overview and a very short way to kind of get you started, but I want to let you know we will be having our gender terminology event in January that we had at the beginning of this year. So we're bringing it back as kind of an annual thing, but this time we're splitting it into 2 sections. So the first one will be gender terminology, and then the second one will go deeper into trans inclusivity and like those actions. So you'll have the language part and then you'll have the action part. So stay tuned for that. And if you want to get more in depth in this kind of introduction, those will be the places to go. And make sure you're on the like email list or on social media, wherever you prefer to get your updates. We'll be sending that out not too far off. So stay tuned. The other thing is we did have the link in the chat. I can send it again if you'd like. We're currently fundraising for our official nonprofit registration. So we started fundraising earlier a couple months ago when we had an artist showcase, and basically just to kind of explain what the goal is. So we started the organization just getting some people together, doing social media, doing shows, doing events like these. But to get our official nonprofit registration is another step so that we're legally recognized and we can get tax exemption and get more opportunities, get in the door to be able to do bigger shows, bigger events, speak at schools, partner with schools to create projects, things like that. So our goal is $750 by June 2022. And we reached our goal of just over 250 at our artist showcase, which means we have $500 left to reach our goal. So that's actually not too bad. It's a way to go, but I believe we can do that. So I'm hoping to reach $100 by the end of this month. As kind of the first little step. So I would love if you could help us get there, even if it's $5, $20, whatever you're willing to give. If you enjoyed this talk, if you've been to previous events, your support would be amazing.